It's the age-old debate, the right to know versus the right to privacy. The Orlando Sentinel and 24 other news outlets are suing Orlando police and fire departments over access to hundreds of 911 calls made during the nightclub massacre several weeks ago. While no doubt they would be compelling, is it newsworthy? The massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando started around 2 a.m. and went on for hours. In that time, some 603 calls were made to 911, many from people inside the club. But law enforcement says they are not releasing those calls.
We will not be providing the 911 calls made by the victims. To expose that now would be excruciatingly painful to exploit them in this way.
But Attorney General Loretta Lynch has not closed down the idea entirely.
I can't tell you when or in what context, but I can tell you that we are open to that.
Even so, the Orlando Sentinel and 24 other news outlets have sued for immediate access to all 911 calls, raising a thorny question over what's news and what's exploitation.
Somebody kill my mama! Somebody kill my mama, please!
That was a 911 call made after Jennifer Hudson's mother and two other family members were murdered. At the time, Chicago Tribune columnist Eric Zorn said airing that audio to dramatize the depths of someone's agony is abusive. On the other hand, 911 calls can be informative. After unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin was gunned down in Florida, this 911 audio called into question whether George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense or as the aggressor.
Are you following him? Yeah. Okay, we don't need you to do that.
But let's face it, the calls from the Pulse nightclub are more likely to sound like this call from the woman who discovered the body of football player Junior Seau. Compelling, but is it news? I am of two minds about this because I've always argued for access to everything. I think we should televise executions. I think we should be in the Supreme Court, cameras in the Supreme Court, cameras in federal courts, of course. But if you're going to, get the audio, then why not get the video? I mean, why limit it to that? I mean, there's video of all the, some people will argue, well, if you saw that, it might be, a further argument against assault weapons. But on the other hand, unless there's something that's really compelling and gives you information, like maybe the police killed more people than we thought. Maybe somebody has that on a cell phone data. If there's something that's informative, but panicked phone calls and, prayers and messages to loved ones, I mean, I'm sure, as the police officer said, it's really compelling, but is it anything beyond prurient?
Well, the problem is you don't know if there's anything compelling until you look at them. And, I obviously understand the argument, and I think at a certain point we have to rely on the news outlets that get that information to use their curatorial powers and their editorial. Well, some will, and you're right, unfortunately some might not. But, the viewer can watch, listen, read, or not. I mean, people have the choice, but I would just sadly err on the side of more information.
I used to think that you should release 911 tapes all the time in local news. I used them all the time in my stories until it happened to me. And someone broke into her home when I wasn't there. My wife was there with our young kids, and she was screaming on a 911 tape. It was released to the press. It got out there, and I thought, wow, what's the value in this? And that was the first time that I realized, well, I've been doing this to other people. And I do agree, there are times when you need that information to help fill in some of the gaps on a story. But a lot of times reporters like it because they have it.
Yes.
It's great for the ratings. It sounds good. It makes your story more gripping. And I have a problem with that.
Well, there are two separate issues here. First of all, there's the fact that these are public records, and they are public records. And Florida has an unusually progressive public records law, so there really isn't much reason for these not to be released. But the second issue, as Joanna suggested, is just because they are released because they're public records doesn't mean you have to use them, put them on the air. You should be vetting them and seeing if there's news. News is when it informs us about what the law enforcement response was.
Exactly.
News is not people screaming about the fact that there's a gunman on the loose. The problem today, as we all know, is that if you release this stuff generally, somebody's going to use it.
Of course.
And it could just be, some one-person operation who loves to put this stuff up, and it's going to be horrible, and it's going to invade people's privacy. But unfortunately, that's the price we pay to have public records.
Whatever ended up happening with Sandy Hook, did they release those 911 calls or not? I remember there was protest about it.
Yeah, you know, I honestly don't know what the
Yeah,
outcome of
yeah.
that was.
Well, the question was whether there would be child abuse in the Sandy Hook case, and I think they aired not, but there was a big discussion
Child
about
abuse?
it. Yes, because your kids screaming.
Yeah,
and
no, but
whatever,
it was, yeah.
But they could have
There were
captured some
911
of that,
calls
so
from
that was
inside the
they were
school.
using that as
Yeah.
a reason, as I understand. But in any case, so with respect, Dan, I think what happened to you is different from what's happening in Pulse. It's obviously horrible, and it's quite personal, and the question of privacy is still there. But at Pulse, there are many questions still left unanswered.
Right.
Were there, why did people think there were two shooters? Where were people?
Yep,
The whole question that you
exactly.
raised at the beginning, there is the question of friendly fire now
Yes.
because there was so much confusion and it was dark. Understandable, but there is that. So this is something that we're going to have an absolute good record about. You're also right, too. If it gets out there, somebody nutty is going to put it all out, and it's not going to be for any rhyme or reason.
They'll just
And
put
it's
all
gonna-
603
That's right. And
calls
it's gonna
on a
be horrible.
website, and
Exactly.
people will just
And
punch
it's going to
through
be
them.
horrible. But there are people that put all kinds of stuff online, and folks go look at it. So I think particularly in this case, I think you have to err on the release it. Maybe there's an argument that the reporter made about transcript rather than audio, but then it gets to your point. If you do the transcript, why not the audio? I don't know how to answer that.
Or the video.
Or the video, for that matter. And by the way, there have been some video released from inside by regular folks, but.
Yes.
So and also I think in this case too, the police did not handle the release or non-release
Oh, that was
well.
horrible. Yeah.
So
The release of
so that caused suspicion.
of the Omar Mateen, that definitely
Right, they
caused
redacted
suspicion.
it. Right,
Yeah.
they redacted
Redacted.
the
And then
ISIS
they ended up-
loyalty statement
Yeah.
out of the call, which was
Huge
which then
mistake.
again sows mistrust.
Yeah.